Doug, Antony Blinken is on a mission to reassure allies and repair transatlantic ties. What are the main issues that he's going to be discussing with the NATO leaders?
Well, looking at, it's no secret, tons of issues. There's Russia and China, their new assertiveness, aggressiveness on the world stage. You obviously have the pandemic. You have the war in Afghanistan, the never-ending long war there. Syria, Libya, the list goes on and on. But look, we just heard Antony Blinken, in what he just said, his comments basically, if that's all he did on this entire trip, made those brief comments, 2 or 3 sentences, and got back on his plane and went back to Washington. For a lot of the people there, the NATO allies, that would be just fine. His showing up is really the message of this trip. It's not that Donald Trump didn't show up occasionally at these NATO get-togethers, but when he did so, he basically, it was a cudgel. He was basically bashing NATO, never-ending torpedoing and pillorying of NATO and the alliance, and just showing in general what was seen as contempt and scorn for this long-standing alliance and America's long-standing allies. So Blinken is a reassuring presence, as you said, and yes, this is a mending, a healing mission. Doesn't mean that they're going to be on the same wavelength with a lot of things, because the world has changed quite a bit in the 4 years of Donald Trump's presidency. And I mentioned Russia and China, more willing than ever to face off with the West, with Europe and the U.S. We saw very angry confrontations, tense confrontations between Blinken and the Chinese just over the weekend in Alaska. So there's a sort of a new world order, a new brave new world order, and Europe's very cognizant of it. The U.S. is cognizant of it, and the U.S. and Europe are not always going to see eye to eye on how they should approach these new global sort of equation as you have it. So they have a lot to talk about. And the war in Afghanistan, I mentioned that as well. Look, they have to figure out how to draw down troops. Trump had wanted to get the troops out by May 1st. That is seen by the Biden administration as not just unfeasible, but a bit reckless and very, very difficult. They want to make sure that the Taliban doesn't come back as an Islamist caliphate, lord it over Afghanistan, abolish women's rights, what little had been gained for women, and see a resurgence of violence and terrorist groups in the country. They want to do this withdrawal in a way that is at once smart and also strategically appropriate. So that's what they're going to be talking about mainly with the NATO component of this trip.
And he's also going to be sitting down, isn't he, Doug, with the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. Lots to discuss there as well.
Absolutely. And, look, we can overstate, the U.S. and Europe being, longstanding allies and on the same page and everything. But look, we have seen tensions and rifts and divergences of approaches between the Europe and the U.S. in the past few years, obviously exacerbated, made worse by Donald Trump in many ways. We've especially here in France seen Emmanuel Macron trying to project a much more assertive, more muscular European voice, saying we should not be basically under the U.S. umbrella. It's not a fatality, as he says. It doesn't have to be that way. Europe could have its own course, its own policies, while also being a strong ally of the U.S. And that's essentially what is going to be at issue with these talks with Ursula von der Leyen, trying to, define the parameters of the U.S.-Europe relationship going forward, especially on trade issues where Biden has shown flashes of some made in America protectionism. Europe is going to be more assertive. And also, obviously, COVID, the pandemic. We're in the thick of it here in Europe. Third wave is forcing lots of countries to slap on new restrictions, new types of lockdowns. The U.S. is, still grappling, but coming out of it, ramping up its vaccinations. So maybe there's going to be some sort of give and take there in ways that that these two blocs can work together more closely on trying to finally overcome and rein in the COVID pandemic, and afterwards to relaunch an economic recovery on both sides of the Atlantic, because it's in both of their interests more than ever.
Doug Herbert, thank you.